All right, welcome back to the No Effects Podcast. I'm your host, Izlain, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Kirkules. What's up, man?
What's going on, man?
Not much. Looks like you're getting ready to go somewhere.
Yeah, I'm just getting ready to head out to Hawaii. So leaving in 2 days for the old island. Never been. Looking forward to it.
Oh, yeah. Any plans while you're out there? Like specific
Uh,
touristy things you're gonna do?
I know we're gonna check out Pearl Harbor, do the Dole Plantation. I think it's the pineapple plantation factory or whatever the hell they're called, farm. Check that out and do some hikes and just a little chilling on the beach. I hope.
Awesome. That sounds like a good time. I've never been either, so yeah, like send pics, I guess.
Will do. I'll edit out the bad stuff.
Yeah. All right. So this week we wanted to kind of get away from the series we've been doing where we've been counting down the top 5 of various types of magic cards because we realized that too many of those in a row could be a little boring. So we've been doing a lot of kind of listy stuff, so wanted to break it up with something a little different this week, and we already got something planned for the next episode that's going to be a little different before we get back, and probably at that point we'll probably be doing Lotro or Lord of the Rings spoilers as well. That's happening right now, so within a couple weeks probably going to need to talk about it. But before all that, we get to all that, this time around I wanted to start a new little series called Brewmaster Chat. I have a channel I actually named that on my Discord, which I just put there for funsies, but it is where we discuss, higher level brewing stuff. Like if somebody comes down and says like, hey, I've got this deck and it's doing okay, but it feels like it needs optimized. Could you guys take a look at it? I mean, some of my other regulars that play a lot and are pretty knowledgeable people will get on there and be like, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Or somebody will just spitball like, I have this idea of this commander pairing, like what should I do with it, and we'll kind of give our advice. But it's also kind of a double entendre because it's the name of someone who heads a brewery and has to do with making sure that those brews are done correctly with the right amount of ingredients and supplies and yada yada yada. So I happen to be a fan of the brews, and I thought it was kind of fun to come here for both of us to sit down, crack a beer, talk about the beer that we're going to be drinking during the episode, and then move on to a brew that we both worked on but did so separately. So basically, Kirk came up with an idea for a list from a particular commander that came out last set, and I was looking at his list and I was like, yeah, it's pretty cool, I like it, but I saw things that I was like, I would do this different. So I was like, I'm going to duplicate your list. I'm going to change it up. And I believe we're 15 or ish cards different.
I just looked at 17 cards as it stands now.
I may have toyed with it some more. I don't recall. But yeah, so we're at that 17 card different mark. So what we thought we'd do here is talk about this beer we're about to start drinking. And then talk about this brew that we brewed and, the general game plan, win cons, some individual card selection type stuff, and then compare and contrast what cards I picked versus what cards he picked, and our reasoning for that, so that everyone who's watching and or listening can kind of get an idea how we brew and how a lot of other people brew too. And honestly, if you do these collab kind of brews, you can show how the same concept can have slightly different avenues, and it shows the flexibility of the format overall, and I thought that was something that would be cool to talk about. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big piece of brewing and playing in general is build to your style, play to your style. I mean, some of Izlain's choices and my choices are just simply our play style choices, and that's important because if you don't play a deck that you enjoy playing, you probably won't play it.
Indeed. And most of the decks on the CDH database, they come with the caveat already that this is a optimized list that will work in pretty much any pod, but your mileage may vary in the sense that your pod might have more stacks, so you need to adjust to that, or more aggro, more control, etc., whatever the case may be. And also that, as Kirk said, your playstyle may vary from the playstyle of the guy who brewed it, so you may want to make some concessions because your pet card is Noxus Revival and they don't have it in the list, and you just gotta have it. So we'll see. But before we jump into the main topic, we do have some housekeeping. We had another comment on last episode's video. Kirk, if you want to read that off for us.
Yep, absolutely. The question I think we asked was, what would you prefer, Wargate or Bring to Light in your deck? And Death by Food Tray replied he'd have to go with Bring to Light. He's never seen Warfare cast or Wargate, cast in the game before. Plus the fact that Bring to Light lets you find and cast Adnaz for Wooburg is kind of nice. He's only seen it ever cast in Cody, so yeah, it definitely flies under the radar. But he said he would go with Bring to Light over Wargate.
I think I agree, because that was the one where you could use treasures to make the other colors to make it like up to 5 CMC, and we discussed that towards the end of the list, so I'm sticking with that. But I mean, just for the people who maybe missed what those cards do, I know Wargate is Bant plus X, and you get a non-land permanent equal to X to the battlefield.
It's actually just search for a permanent, so you could do a land as well.
Okay, so any permanent, and then the other one was up to the number of colors used to spend, and it's 3 and 2 or 3 in Simic.
Yep, that's exactly right. And you can cast instant, sorcery, or creature, I believe is what it is.
So they have their ups and downs. You know, one is less prohibitively costed, you know, because usually if you're tutoring, you're probably, you know, having to spend 2 to 3 mana. I mean, maybe they cost about the same because your average target is going to be 3 CMC, maybe less, maybe more, who knows. So yeah, I mean, they have their pros and cons, but I think I would also go with Bring to Light. But we're going to end up talking about these cards a little bit more because they're included in one of our lists. You'll have to listen further to find out whose. Either way, let's move on to what we're drinking. So today, and most days, honestly, this is my go-to brew of choice. I did actually, we had talked about recording this a different day, and I had something else picked out, but that's been drank, so I cannot talk about that. But today I'm drinking, this is going to be backwards probably, but it's Voodoo Ranger is the kind of sub-brand. It's made by New Belgium, who makes Fat Tire and some other non-IPA type beers, but this is their IPA line, Voodoo Ranger, and not only is it a really cool looking mascot, like I kind of want to get this guy tattooed on me, I don't know why, but this is the first one I tried, it was just their regular IPA, and it's pretty good, and I think it's like 6% or something, which is a little more than your average domesticated beer that's like, you know, 3.5 to 4%, so a little bit more of a kick to it, but they continuously put out new brews all the time. They've got some that are kind of seasonal, not seasonal, but they're like rotational, like they'll come out for a while and then they just disappear. They also do variety packs where you'll eventually get like whatever their newest stuff is kind of smashed into a pack and you can try them all. And honestly, this is the one I like the best. This one, and then there's one other one. They have another one that's in an orange can, and it's got a fruity flavor to it, which is weird, like seems weird, but like it works really well. It's actually probably the most enjoyable IPA I've ever tasted as far as like pure taste. I like this one though. It's a hearty 9% alcohol, so it's, you can drink 3 or 4 of these, get a really nice buzz, and just go to bed, or you know, whatever. If I was going to be outside on like the river or something all day, I would not drink these because you'd be faded way too fast. But when you're just chilling at home by yourself, or you know, with a couple buddies, and you're just gonna have a couple beers before or while doing whatever, it's a great choice. It is a little harsh. If you don't like a super hoppy flavor, you're not gonna like this, but I love it. As far as I know, it's nationwide, so a little expensive. It's like $20 for a 12-pack, but again, you that's if it's just for you, that 12-pack is gonna last you a few days, unless you're a raging alcoholic, and I'm not quite there. What did you get?
So I'm rocking, it's by Great Divide, and it's their Strawberry Rhubarb Sour Ale. So a little thematic for my lovely vacation, doing a little bit of the fruity action with the pelicans, or the flamingos, not pelicans, good lord. Anyway, it's like 6.2% alcohol by volume, I think. I don't know why I'm not an IPA fan, at least not one I found that I like. Maybe I'll try yours out and see what I think. But
you probably wouldn't like this one, but I'm telling you that the one that comes in the orange can, it's like Juice Force, or I think it's Juice Force IPA. It, like, look it up. It's really good. It tastes good.
I mean, I'll try it if it's beer. I mean, you know, that's not a problem. But I haven't found any that I'm willing to throw down some coin to buy personally. I don't know. A couple years back, I got introduced to some different sours and stuff, and I figured out I kind of like those. I tend to like dark beers, wheat beers. The other one I'm actually going to drink as soon as I'm done with that one. I've got Sam Adams Black Lager, dark and roasted. Ooh, so yeah, that's my jam.
I like the dark ones too myself.
Yeah, I like dark beers. I'll drink any beer if we're being honest. But if I'm just drinking, like you said, 1 or 2, I like Sam Adams. They have some pretty decent flavors. As everybody's heard of Sam Adams, for crying out loud. But yeah, I don't know. I like the Great Divide too. I discovered this one when I was on vacation in, God, where did I go last? I don't even remember. Anywho, Florida or something, and I found this, and it actually comes out of Colorado, so maybe I was in Colorado. Hell, I don't know, but it's pretty good.
Sam Adams, actually, when I was really big on drinking them all the time, I always liked the Oktoberfest and the Winter Lager. Their cherry wheat is delicious. Harder to find, but if you can find it, it's worthwhile. It actually tastes like cherry, but it's like a wheat beer flavor finish or whatever, so it's got a nice... It's crisp. It's good. It's like a good summer drinking beer. You might not want more in a 6-pack, though, because then, the cherry kind of starts to wear on you a bit. But they did make one for a while. I don't know if you can still find them. I haven't seen them in ages, but I used to get... they had an Imperial Stout, which came in a 4-pack, and it was like something like 10%. It was outrageous, but that 4-pack would put you on your ass, for sure.
Nice. Going into summer, so I went to college in Manhattan, Kansas, so... Summer, we were drinking summer beers, which is if you're doing anything like outside of the pool or hanging out,
like the shandies or whatever.
So no, it's half a cup of lemonade, half a cup of beer, and a shot of vodka.
Yeah,
super refreshing.
I think that's a shandy, isn't it?
I don't freaking know, but it's delicious, dude. I drank more than my share of those in a day.
I've just had like mimosas, like 11 o'clock in the morning, drinking fucking
I drank a ton
mimosas.
of those when I was in Mexico last. Hell yeah.
That's a nasty feeling, though. Like, the last time I did that, it was like we had roommates that were like, hey, let's have some mimosas, and it's like 10 o'clock. I'm like, okay, fuck it. It's my day off. I don't care. And we got through like 2 bottles of champagne or whatever, and then, yeah, it was... We were good. Like, I had a nice, good buzz, and then it was like later in the afternoon, I was just like, whoa. Like, I wasn't tired enough to sleep, and it just, you start like having your hangover before you're done. Like, I would rather drink later at night so that I go to bed and I don't experience it.
Sleep it off.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Day drinking
more house
not for the week.
No.
All right, so now we know what we were drinking. So that is that half of the Brewmaster chat. The next part is talking about this episode's brew. So recently we got our hands on the 5-color Omnath, which we talked about in the set review, I do believe.
We did. I think we mentioned it.
I wasn't super high on it. I was just like, it's just another 5-color commander. Who cares? Whatever. And then apparently Kirk was a little more high on it and actually brewed a list and then showed it to me, and I was kind of like, okay, I can see it now. So let's start with you, since you were actually the progenitor of the list. Like, what was your initial, like, concept for it? Like, what was the first thing you thought of when you saw it? Like, how you were going to exploit it? What were some of the key, like, combos or cards that you thought of that you wanted to try and fit in there, and why, and stuff of that nature?
Sure. So, my typical haha. I like to usually pick a commander, and then figure out how I can best exploit that commander's ability, effect, etc. This wasn't the case here. This was one, I think it was one of those late night, just got done playing 6 hours straight of CDH, was looking at some of my deck list, doing some tweaking, and I thought, you know what? I really like Acererak, the Archlich, however you say it, and I had never seen anyone rock Rooftop Storm. Originally in my build, I had Rooftop Storm and Alurin, so you could cast it for free repeatedly and win.
I did Alurin with that card with a Dina list back in the day, because I initially had it on Hulk, and I didn't like the way you could draw your cards and have a dead Hulk pile. So right. I kind of was just like, this sucks, and I got rid of that. And then I was like, well, what else do I do? And I had seen somebody else that had been talking about it, and I was like, that's kind of cool. So I slammed it in. I won a game with it, I think once, but Alurin is very risky compared to Rooftop Storm. What does Acererak and Rooftop Storm do together?
So Rooftop Storm, it's 1 blue and 5. It's an enchantment. You may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for zombie creature spells you cast.
Okay.
Seems weird, a 6-mana enchantment in CEDH, but we'll get to that when we talk about our deck list differences. And plus, with the big old black mana battery in the command zone, it gets a lot easier to cast it later.
Correct.
And Acererak, so he is, or they, or it, or whatever, it's a zombie wizard. 1 black and 2 for a 5/5 legendary creature, zombie wizard. When Acererak the Archlich, what do you say? Archlich? I don't know. Anyway.
Archlich? I don't know.
There we go. I'm not a D&D guy. Sorry, everybody that's a D&D players. I liked the movie. I just don't do D&D. When Acererak the Archlich enters the battlefield, if you haven't completed Tomb of Annihilation, which I've got over here if you really want me to read it, but it's irrelevant because you're not going to the Tomb of Annihilation, most likely.
When dungeons as a mechanic were introduced in that first Forgotten Realms set, or Dungeons and Dragons set, I should say, there was 3 of them. There's Lost Mine of Phandelver, which is the one we use here, and then there was Dungeon of the Mad Mage and Tomb of Annihilation. This one cares about Tomb of Annihilation because theoretically you want to keep going until you've finished it, and then once you finished it, then he actually stays on the battlefield and you have a 5/5, and then whenever it attacks, you get 2/2s for each opponent, so it kind of turns into a Grave Titan, which is great for casual, and that's where their design space was, but, you know, we're CDH players, we break their shit, so we figured out Lost Mine of Phandelver and this guy means that he just infinitely bounces. Well, that's great, but then you gotta pay 3 mana every time, right? So with Rooftop Storm, 0 mana cost, so the turn you play Rooftop, if he's in your hand, you can play him for free, bounce it back to your hand, play it for free, over and over again, and the Lost Mine has one section in it, it's towards the middle of the card, that says, your opponents lose 1 life, and you gain 1 life, and you just keep looping through that until the table's dead.
Yep.
Along the way, you're also making tokens like treasures and other things, or scrying, and I think you draw at the end of that dungeon as well, but mostly that's not important.
Yeah, it's like scry 1, and then you can either make a goblin or create a treasure. So then if you go through the middle of the dark pool, you drain, everybody loses a life, you gain a life, each opponent. And then the last one is draw a card. Yeah, so in that loop, you have to have more cards in your library than your opponents have life in order to just keep doing that action to win the game. However, even if you don't, if you're making a treasure and drawing a card for every damage that they're losing, you're probably drawing into another combo or another way to win.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Sure. I like the card. I thought it was hilarious. I'm like, okay. So I stumbled across Rooftop Storm years ago, and I always wanted to try it in CDH. So anyway, that was my first thought. I'm like, what deck can I build that I can jam Rooftop Storm in and it won't be terrible? And originally, like I said, I put Allure in. It's since left the list, and then I thought, I'm having an absolute fucking blast playing Hoarding Broodlord and Saw in Half.
Yes. I've been jamming it in every list I can.
Holy shit, it's so much fun. It's like the most fun thing you can do that's not ad nauseum. Infinitely more fun than Kirk Sakashima. Sorry, I have a buddy that I played against last night, and I hate that deck.
I agree.
Anyway. Sorry for all you Kirk and Sakashima players. So Saw in Half and Hoarding Broodlord. Hoarding Broodlord is 3 black and 5 for a 7/6 dragon. It's got Convoke, so you can tap creatures to cast it, or to help cast it. It's flying, and when Hoarding Broodlord enters the battlefield, search your library for a card, exile it face down, then shuffle. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may play it. Spells you cast from exile have Convoke. Not just that spell, any spell you cast from exile has Convoke, interestingly enough. Anyway, so Saw in Half, I'll read that one real quick. It's 1 black and 2 colorless. It's an instant from Unfinity. God, anyway. Destroy target creature.
We hate that part, but we love the card.
Absolutely. I like the artwork too. It's weird. Anyway, destroy target creature. If that creature dies this way, its controller creates 2 tokens that are copies of that creature, except their base power is half that creature's power. Their base toughness is half that creature's toughness. Round up each time. So if you saw your dragon, you get 2 4/3s. Both dragon tokens enter the battlefield. Then that's where it gets really fun. The main idea is to tutor up, peer into the abyss, and sacrifice, or the better version of sacrifice, which is burnt offering. Thank you. So those go into exile. You tap one of your tokens to cast the burnt offering with the Convoke. Sack the token you just tapped. You get 6 black mana and 2 red mana. Tap the other token you just created for 1 of the mana to cast your Peer into the Abyss using your remaining 6 black mana or 5 black and a red, whatever you want. Mm-hmm. And you cast Peer into the Abyss. And then you have half your library in your hand and 2 floating mana. Hopefully you can assemble some type of win attempt from there. If it's gotten to that far and hasn't gotten countered, there's a very good chance you should be winning that turn.
So you should be like almost guaranteed winning. Peer, because it draws half your life. It's not like Adnaz where you can kind of have a shitty Naz and draw 6 cards, 10 cards, and like you're down to no life and you're like, damn, that sucks. With Peer, you just lose half your life. So even if you're at 2 life, you go down to 1 life, and now you get your half your library. And if you can't win with that, well, somebody probably gut shot you or lightning bolt you or something.
Yeah, something's went horribly wrong. Yeah.
And also, if you've gotten this far, like you're pretty sure people don't have counters, or if they do, they're just banking on you like being able to counter your thing. But you're also in blue because this is a 5-color deck, so there's already going to be protection. Ideally, you do this when you have a Grand Abolisher or something on the field, and then you don't have to worry about it at all. But in the cases where you do, as Kirk said, there are going to be those times where you don't actually draw the win, but maybe you draw a tutor or something else. So I guess what we should ask, or what I should ask now is, okay, so those are the two main like kind of concepts that you had for it.
What led me to Omnath was I'm thinking, okay, I want to be obviously in blue. I want to be in black. Simple enough. I'm thinking probably want to be in white for Silence, Grand Abolisher, Ranger Captain of Eos effects, just to protect that win, as we've talked about.
Yeah.
And initially I was also, like I said, on Allurin, so I wanted to be in green. I kind of drove that decision too. And I thought, well, I'm playing all these cards, and I might as well just try and find a 5-color commander so I can also play Dockside to get. I'm thinking of alternative ways to cast the Hoarding Broodlord if I draw it.
Right.
Dockside makes a crap ton of mana. Boom, you go Hoarding Broodlord,
or
then
also
Storm shenanigans and
the battery aspect, which we didn't really talk about with Omnath. Just that he has a clause on him that says if you would lose unspent mana, that mana becomes black. And we looked up the rulings. Yeah, we did talk about it because we looked up the rulings. When we looked it up, it says that it does not leave as steps and phases end as long as Omnath is on the field. The second Omnath dies, you got until the end of that phase, and then the mana's gone.
Yep, exactly. So I was literally, I'd kind of settled on, I want to play Rooftop Storm in a deck, and I'm playing black, and I'm having a blast with Hoarding Broodlord, so I'm like, I'm probably including that in whatever deck I build. So I'm thinking, what the hell commander do I build? I don't want to do a Kenrith, I don't want to do, a Cis-A or something, because those decks have different play lines that are probably just more suited to already winning with their combos. So I'm thinking, okay, what the hell commander could I play and build this with? So I started looking, and I looked at Omnath, and I thought, what's interesting? It draws cards. It stores up a bunch of black mana for casting a Broodlord or a big old Rooftop Storm, and it doesn't draw you a card every turn. It puts a card in your turn it puts an extra card in your hand every turn. Not a draw, which is good against stacked decks. Right. Yeah, and it can also produce its own mana. Like you said, if you flip over the 3 pips on the old Hoarding Broodlord or Peer into the Abyss, you get 3 mana. You can just probably cast it right there. So that's how I landed on good old 5-color Omnath.
You see, I would say that probably a lot of people would look at that Omnath, and this is where I thought the brew was interesting to me, because I didn't really look at the mana battery part as being all that great. I looked more at the other thing, and it was like, okay, so you want to kind of build this in a way to where you have at least 3 colored pips in a lot of your spells, so you get to when you get to value out stuff off of him. And honestly, in the few games that I've played, I very rarely even cast him. He's just there. You can, if you get the right mana sources at the beginning, but 90% of the time I'm like sitting on tutors and I want to go get other things and do other things. So like, I have cast him before, but I haven't banked a ton of mana. Obviously I haven't played it a ton either. I think that is probably valuable still. It's just the fact that you have to get at least those 4 colored pips and then pay 2 life to even get him out. So he's usually a turn, 3 or 4 kind of drop, and then by then you're being tested by other decks trying to go fast. So the mana battery part can be really good, but it also can be kind of a liability if you're banking on it.
Right. It's a little slow. I do love the fact that he's kind of my mid-range plan all in a card. I'm trying to go for Thassa's Oracle combos or, whatever else, and trying to just jam those out and see what happens. But if you get stopped and you need a backup plan, a 4/4 beater in the command zone that's drawing you extra or putting extra cards in your hand every turn, gaining you mana, not the worst. I've also done some really fun shit with it where I've, at an opponent's end step, I've tapped my Soul Ring, floated 2 colorless mana, go to my next opponent's turn, it turns into black mana. Now I have 2 black mana, and I can cast my, my Vampiric Tutor and stuff like that.
I think that's more how you do the mana banking anyways. If you do get him down, you wait until the end step before yours, tap anything remaining just to have the mana additionally. So
Paper Flusterstorms and crap. It is. It's
never bad to bank mana.
I thought I would.
It's actually better to bank it this way than it is to bank it with like treasures off a Dockside. So
absolutely, yeah, you're not feeding a Dockside with it exactly. And as Izlain's list and mine, I think we can talk about those at some point here. We both play Invasion of Ikoria, and we both play Finale of Devastation. So having that extra black mana floating around, you will probably find a use for it at some point, even if your main win attempt gets stopped. So yeah, he's kind of my mid-range plan. Like if I get stopped on what I'm trying to do early, I'll just jam him out there, value some cards, build up some mana, and then go for it again. And people
Right.
are unrealistically like scared of him when he hits the battlefield. They're like, "Oh, it's an Omnath." I'm like, yeah, but it's
He's
an
actually
extra card of return. He's not
he's
there.
actually kind of worse than all the rest of them outside of just being 5 color.
Yeah, in its weird way. So.
Well, he's probably better than the green one because he's got the mana banking, but then he's just 5 color, bigger body or whatever. Like I think he's arguably better than that one. He's probably better than the girl one too. But I think once you get to like the teamer and the 4 color, they have some more stuff going where he's more part of the game plan. Whereas this, you literally don't even need to cast him. You can play whole games, win games. I've won a game without casting him once. So,
Which was kind of attractive to me as a 5 color. A lot of the 5 color commanders, Sisay and Kenrith and those types, they're not like specifically dependent on their commander to win the game,
but they're built around it. Yeah.
built around it a lot more so. Whereas, I mean, we're still built around this in a weird way because banking the mana, like I said, will have uses for it and extra. Who doesn't want extra cards? But it's not as important. So if he does get countered or you don't get the correct mana pips to cast him, it's not as big a deal, which I really liked.
I think that's what attracted me. Well, first it was you talking about Rooftop Storm, and I was like, so I have a soft space in my heart for Rooftop Storm because one of my early, just regular EDH decks when I first started getting into the format was Izlain Geralf. So it was Dimir zombies. They had the ability to like cast a zombie from your grave once per turn. And then I had that in the deck to be able to drop the huge ones for free. And it was just always like such a thing where it's like, man, being able to make these zombies free is so cool. And like,
It's pretty sick. Yeah.
I also had just started playing around that time, and that was when those cards came out. So like, actually, Rooftop Storm might be from OG Innistrad. This was
Yeah,
I know the guys in Grolf came from the second version. Yeah, it is from OG. So I wasn't around for that one, but I was around when, like I said, when the second Innistrad came, and that was when we got Geist and Geralf and like as a paired card together, which I guess was kind of a future sight into March of the Machine, which we never even thought about talking about. But hey, there we are. Either way, there was that, and then like that turned into Scarab God, and then it turned into what was the Esper one from that pre-con, where like all I know is that when you attacked with her and however many zombies you did, you like discarded that many cards, drew that many cards. Yeah, it was pretty spicy because then you got stuff like Anointed Procession and stuff to make extra tokens and
Butcher
other
the
white zombies.
pronunciation. Verena.
Yeah,
Verena?
Verena, yeah, that's the one.
There you go. The Lich Queen. Yeah, there you go.
And then eventually I gave up on zombies because as cool as they are, they're just not competitive, and that's that. There are competitive zombies, though. I've obviously done like the Gravecrawler lines in some decks and whatever, so they exist. But in this case, it is a very jank combo, but it's fucking cool. It does different shit, and that was what kind of attracted me to it when Kirk showed me his list. It was like, I even told him as soon as I saw it, it's like that Hoarding Broodlord into the with the saw in half into the burnt offering and the pier is just chef's kiss. It's so good. So as soon as I saw that, I knew I wanted to play that, and that's also when I started jamming that into like all of my decks because it's just such a cool combo. I've actually gotten a couple other people to jam it into their decks too because they saw me do it and they were like, "Oh man, that's fucking cool." So yeah, I mean, I think the overall concept was cool, and then obviously with it being 5 color, you have some of the best win options in the game. You know, there's still like the Thassa's Oracle and whatnot. Let me introduce my deck a little bit here. It is essentially the same concept. I want it, like I said, we're 17 cards apart, so it's not a huge difference. I guess I leaned more into the Hoarding Broodlord aspect of it than Kirk did, in a way that like, instead of only running one burnt offering, like I'm running sacrifice as well, and there were some other things like that I kind of looked at and said, okay, like I don't like this card, so I'm going to cut that and yada yada. So that's how I ended up getting to where I am. The concept's the same though. We're still running generally the same value pieces and everything like that. It's just, it kind of changes when we get into like the win cons and like how you get to the win cons. So I guess I'll start off here just by pointing out one thing that's kind of unique to my list and my reasoning for it, and then maybe you can give reasoning why you didn't. So right off the bat, so I'm looking at the compare now if you want to pull that up. Right off the bat, I have LED, Underworld Breach, and Brain Freeze as a backup win condition, or just a straight up win condition once you've gone for Pier. We're both on Thassa's Oracle, Tainted Pact, and Demonic Consultation, so like we both agreed that is a standard staple. It's in any deck that can run it because it is such an easy. You don't have to cast your commander. You don't even have to cast the peer. You just have those in your hand. You have the mana. You go and you win. Done and done.
And the tutors can be relatively useful cards, especially if you're going for, Rooftop Storm Lines or something goofy. So, yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and then in other like if you're on Food Chain, which I don't know that this is a Food Chain deck, but if you're on Food Chain, those tutors are great because they can exile your exile guys. But so I ended up including this because it's the Underworld Breach combo line. Plus, I like Underworld Breach in 5 color lists because even if you're not going for the combo, there are going to be times where like something you need got countered, or you've just gone through a longer Staxy game and a lot of your stuff's in the grave, and you're just like, hey man, I want to get value off all that. I got 2 tutors in the grave. I can Underworld Breach and tutor both and go get my win. So also, by itself, it's just high card quality and it's a great recursion tool. Like, yeah, if it's in your opening hand, it's kind of sucks, but outside of that, you almost always like having it. Brain Freeze also kind of a dead card, but I did use one the other day where somebody was stormed off a little bit, and I actually milled them for like 16 cards, and they got down to where they had hardly any cards left in their deck, but they still managed to have what they needed in their hand, and that's what I was trying to mill. I didn't know it was in their hand, so it didn't work, but it could still be used in that way. LED, I hate using LED outside of this combo. It is kind of a dead card to me, but it is what it is. It is part of the combo, and you kind of need it. So I chose to put this in just to have another backup win con. I hate only being on Thassa's as the main win because if it gets blown out or whatever, you just have no recursion. Like, so what do? You're not beating people's faces with a 4/4. Maybe with the dragon, but I digress. What are your reasonings for like not putting that in?
Okay, so the biggest 2 reasons are, and you kind of touched on them. There's 3. Brain Freeze, while you can screw with somebody's top deck tutor, you can obviously fire it off in response to somebody tutoring for something to try and nerf what they're looking for. It's got its uses, and you can also just dome yourself for a bunch of cards and reanimate something. Not really a line I wanted to lean into. I thought it was too dead too often for what I was going for. Same with LED. LED's got uses, obviously, but again, with a 5-pip commander, it's not going to really help you cast the commander in the mid game if you need it, other than to cast for one of the pips, which is pretty horrible.
I think it's okay in the sense of like it could be the 3 pips for your Brood Lord or your
sure. I mean,
in that regard, it's okay, but you have to cast that first, so it doesn't actually work because it goes in the grave.
Right.
So yeah.
If you cast a tutor, then you pip it, and then you activate it in response to your tutor to get your 3 black mana, then you find your Brood Lord. Sure, I get it. There are uses.
Yeah.
But I felt like it was too dead too often for what I was going for. Underworld Breach, very good card. Obviously, it's got lots of uses. I was looking at it as that would be like the mid to late game combo to try and win, and Omnath is my mid to late game piece for value to try and get back into one of my other combos. So I went with and that's kind of the biggest difference between our 2 lists. You're very much on trying to win with hoarding Broodlord into Saw into our fun shenanigans. I'm very much trying to win with Rooftop Storm. That I unabashedly will admit I'm going hard for Rooftop Storm. That's just where I'm at. So I'm playing in lieu of those pieces. I'm playing Academy Rector. So when it's a 1 white and 3 1/2, when it dies, you can exile it from your grave, tutor an enchantment straight to the battlefield. I'm playing Mayhem Devil, which with Dockside Loops you can kill everybody. And it's also just great removal because this deck does not like Opposition Agent.
And
not many decks do. But
sorry, I ended up not putting Mayhem Devil in because I did end up cutting the other piece for that, which is Emil.
Yep, which I play as well. So that's also why I didn't feel like I needed the rooftops or the Underworld Breach lines as a backup. Plus, I like Underworld Breach. If I was going to play that line, I would probably look at maybe including Adnaz in the deck, but the deck's just so high CMC that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'm doing with it that you're not is because I'm so heavy on the Rooftop Storm line, I'm playing Sidisi Undead Vizier, however you say it. It's the 5 mana 4/6 zombie with Death Touch that has Exploit. So my favorite win lines in this deck, my absolute favorites, not even close. It's Eldritch Evolution, Diabolic Intent, or Sidisi. Casting one of those, sacking my Academy Rector in response, or as part of the cost. Academy Rector hits the bin. Academy Rector finds Rooftop Storm to the battlefield. Then my tutor resolves finding a Sarac to the battlefield. And giddy up. So
yeah, I remember seeing that, and so like you had already kind of like put all the combos in your primer when I looked at it. So when I was looking at it, I was like, okay, I get it. Emil, Dockside, that's cute. And you could also be running Sabretooth and or Baron if you really wanted to go like Dockside lines. And if you like this list and you want to do that, you can feel free. You can find your own cuts
go
and
ahead,
do
make
that.
it better. No doubt.
And Mayhem Devil is great too. You could also be running Cloudstone Curio to do Dockside loops and then have Mayhem Devil. You could also be running Magda, which I do Magda, Mayhem, Curio, and Dockside in other decks with like Wishclaw Talisman, and you just make the treasures off Dockside. Then you use Magda to go get your Wishclaw, and then you Wishclaw out the Mayhem Devil, and then you just go ham from there. Or you have to have the looper too. But you know what I'm saying? Like I've done those kinds of things. And if you are on Pier, you can assemble combos like that because you're going to get some free mana as you go through because you should have a bunch of rocks and stuff that are cheap, other rituals and things. And then you can go and assemble combos like that, or you already have a piece or two on the board already. Like you already have a Mayhem Devil out, you can go and find your Emil or a tutor for it, and you can go find your Dockside or a tutor for it, and so on and so forth. I didn't really think with the ability to bank the mana off of the commander, and then still having Dockside as a good ritual piece, but not necessarily going into loops with it. I was just looking at it as a pure ritual, and I'm going to not worry about that because I can bank mana off my commander, and then I'm not feeding other people's Docksides. Also, with all of the artifact hate that runs around in the format, like I didn't want to depend on treasures and Dockside as much, so I chose not to run that, and that's my argument. Academy Rector 2, I love the card. I run it in my mints list that that goes and gets you your win con. It's a great card. I just didn't like that there was only 3 ways, maybe 4 if you count Phyrexian Tower, to sack it. And in that regard, I felt like that would never be reliable enough. Now, that doesn't mean it isn't, but it just felt that way to me, and so that was kind of why I got away from the Rector altogether.
That's another big piece of the differences between our two lists, and it speaks to why there are some differences to our list. I think more than anything, I tailored my removal to be able to nerf an opponent's creature or destroy my own Academy Rector. So whereas you're playing Swords to Plowshares at Exiles, that won't work with mine. I'm playing like Dismember in that exact same spot because I want to be able to nerf my own little dude and kill it.
Right.
A Braid can kill it. I don't know if you're playing a Braid. I can point my Braid at it. I also play, Mayhem Devil is real easy to shoot it for 2, so that's another reason I play Mayhem Devil for that.
Sure.
And then, like you said, Phyrexian Tower, I play Crop Rotation just because it's another way to tutor straight to the battlefield, the Phyrexian Tower. So
yeah, I'm on Crop Rotation as well, but I'm only getting Gaia's Cradle, I believe.
Yeah, which is pretty sick.
Which is fine, but like also, my list is on 17 creatures, so you're not getting a ton of value off that either. I almost cut Crop Rotation altogether. But then I ended up putting it back in because I was like, it's really too good. 1 mana into and sack a land into 2-3 mana is still good enough. So I ended up keeping it.
Like I said, I shouldn't even say I'm leaning into Rooftop Storm. I am leaning into Rooftop Storm, but I'm really, really leaning into the Sararak killing people, which Dockside, Emil, Infinite Treasures. If you get a Sararak, you can also do that. So you can also go through your old lost mine of the Fandelver repeatedly with that loop too. So that's the biggest difference in our builds, I think.
Yeah, well, and also like in the games that I've played, that's how I won. Is I did the Pier into the Abyss and got the Rooftop Storm and the Sararak. So like, I still look at that as the main win con because it's fun and different, and
it's hella fun.
it may be quote unquote suboptimal to some people because it is a lot of steps and yada yada. But honestly, people are running the Pier, the Brood Lord into Pier a lot, so it's just we're just choosing a different win con than you did. But like honestly, you just have to have the 6 mana, which is usually pretty easy to do. And then if you're running like I am, Sacrifice and Burnt Offering, if you get both of those. Well, you're going to get one of them during the tutor after the Son half, but if you get the other one in your Pier, you can then use that to cast the Rooftop Storm. As long as you have a blue.
Mana on tap, yeah, right. No shit.
So, that's why I chose to run both of those too, is to have the option in case like one gets exiled for some reason off a Ragavan or something. You're like, shit, I don't have a backup for this. I can't do the main combo. So I wanted to have a secondary version of that. We're both running Entomb, and that is kind of what I felt was kind of the best way to get the Brood Lord, was to entomb it and then reanimate it. So I believe we're both on Animate Dead, but I also put in, let's see, I'm on Animate, Dance of the Dead, and Necromancy. I think you're only on the first 2. I do like having that instant speed ability to do it.
I'm on Animate Dead, Dance of the Dead, and Reanimate. I'm not on Necromancy, so I've got 3 of the 4.
All right, I kept reanimate too because it's good for, getting someone else's stock side or whatever.
Absolutely.
So I like it for that reason. But
real fun to counter somebody's Thassa's Oracle and on your turn reanimate it and win.
Right. And also to the point of the whole leaning into the Brood Lord thing and peer, for the reason that there might be a case where you peer and you don't get a lot of fast mana and you've already kind of tapped yourself out, you don't have a lot floating, maybe you got the Rooftop Storm and the Serac, but you don't have enough mana to cast the Rooftop Storm, you don't have the sacrifice or anything to do that thing. I included Final Fortune. Because if you've gotten to this point, nobody's interacted, it's likely you can cast that Final Fortune, take another turn, now you have all of your mana available to you, and you can cast the game-winning combo to go. I've been jamming Final Fortune in a lot of decks that are on Adnaz or Peer just for that reason, because sometimes you find yourself in a position where you just can't win and you need that extra turn. Also, it could be a thing where, you're maybe not even doing the Peer thing, maybe you're just I have Thassa's Oracle and a Tutor in my hand, but I only have, this much mana, I need one more turn to be able to untap to be able to cast that and have, an extra mana for a counterspell to protect it. So you do this and you hope for the best. I mean, obviously you're putting yourself at risk, but it's a risk I'm willing to take.
Yeah. I mean, there's speaking of the differences, so Bring Delight, I'm playing Bring Delight in my list. Izlain is not in his. I had Wargate in initially, I was trying it. I ended up just sticking with Bring Delight.
Yeah, I
because it can find yeah, it can find Dockside or Emil for me. It can find Serac for me. It can find Thassa's Oracle. It can find Demonic Consultation, Demonic Tutor, blah blah blah. So that's why I'm trying it, and I've actually been quite happy with it because if you think about it, it's almost like another copy for me, and sometimes better than Invasion of Ikoria or Finale of Devastation, because for 5 mana I can probably go find Emil and play him for free after that, as long as I've cast it before. Whereas if you're doing that with Invasion of Ikoria or Finale of Devastation, you need 6 to put it on the battlefield. So it's just a little cheaper discount on that. It's the way I was looking at it. It's
kind of like a Mizzix's Mastery in that regard for an
very much, very much. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't see a problem with that. I just the only other thing really that I included that's kind of combo-ish is I put in a Dualcaster. And I put that in there just because it does combo with Saw in Half, in the sense that it will make you infinite 1/1s. The issue is it's not like Twin Flame, so it doesn't give them haste. So it is kind of one of those things where you can do it, and you have your board state to kill everyone, but then you have to hope that when you pass, nobody has a board wipe or a Psych Rift or anything. And when it comes back around to you, you kill the table. And I know that that's not optimal, but I found the Dualcaster Mage is just good in a lot of weird situations where somebody casts something and you're like, yeah, I'd like a copy of that. Yeah, I'd like a copy of that.
I want to be in the game where you tutor up, peer into the abyss, and burn offering. You do the thing, you end up floating 6 black mana and 2 red mana, and then you cast peer, floating your 2 red, and then jam in your Dualcaster to copy your peer. I want to see that happen sometime. I just throwing that.
I mean,
it'd be fucking hilarious.
That is a thing that could happen. That is
Draw
true.
3/4 of your deck. It seems way better, right?
Yeah.
I don't hate Dualcaster. It's a little hard, like you said, because it doesn't have haste right away. It's a little hard.
I almost jammed in Twin Flame as well, but then I was like, the slots were getting tight, and I just didn't.
That's 5 color problems, right? God. Yeah. The one card that I'm trying right now that I'm not in love with, and I'm not sure if it's going to stay for me. So Sidisi, by the way, Sidisi is another zombie that's free. So if you have Rooftop Storm and Sidisi, boom, you go get your Serac, you win. That's why I play it.
You do have to have a creature to exploit, though.
It can exploit itself.
Oh, right. Duh. I always forget about that.
Yeah. It's always...
Got him.
It does weird shit, man. It's just a cool card, and it's a 4/6 Death Touch, so, I mean, I guess that's a thing sometimes.
I've never been a fan of Sidisi, and so this is the reason I cut Sidisi, and I also cut the Wargate, and I cut the Bring to Light, is that I'm just not a fan of 5 CMC tutors. I'm not a fan of 4 CMC tutors. I pretty much draw the line at 3, and mostly it's 2. Now, granted, I am running Wishclaw, which is technically 3 mana, right? So, in that regard, it's that. But usually, this either comes down on a turn where I just need to go get my thing to win, or it's like I've already peered and it's there, and I use it to win. So, people don't usually get the value off of it.
That's fair.
So,
the big card I'm considering cutting, and it's not Sidisi, so there. It's one I'm testing, and I'm not sure what to think of it yet. I haven't played enough games with it in hand to make an accurate assessment. Surge of Salvation. It's 1 white mana instant. You and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. prevent all damage that black and red sources would deal to creatures you control this turn. I'm playing it because I'm trying so hard for the Rooftop Storm /Emil /Dockside loop type lines.
We're both on Veil, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so it is kind of the white version of Veil, which we talked about when we talked about it in the set review.
Right, but I wanted something specifically to stop somebody from Bosejuing my Rooftop Storm. Sounds goofy, or Otawaroing it, or whatever else. So that's kind of why I'm trying that one. It's a pseudo weird. It might be better off as just another counterspell, although we're already playing all the good ones. You know, Offer, You Can't Refuse, and Swan Song, Mental Misstep, etc. But that's the one I'm testing. I'm not in love with yet. We'll see. It might leave, and if it leaves, I'm hardcore torn between adding Sacrifice, adding Wishclaw Talisman. I might try Finale. Who knows? That's kind of my flex spot that I'm playing with right now. But everything else I've been pretty happy with. I'm also on Destiny Spinner, whereas you're not. That one's always rough. I hate that it feeds Dockside being an enchantment creature, but again, when you're trying the Asterarak loops, you want to try and protect it. So that's
I understood why
one.
You put it there. I mean, it is good protection for. It stops Rooftop Storm from getting countered, same as Asterarak, so it protects the combo. It's just I only play it in like Food Chain or decks where like. I don't know. This is kind of that same kind of deck, so I mean, it makes total sense. I don't know why I decided to not. I was gonna say that, like, outside of these couple differences in our WinCon packages and stuff, like our interaction packages are slightly different. Like you already brought up the difference with swords, as opposed to something else that you're playing. Dismember.
Dismember. Yeah.
But like I'm on Nature's Claim, which you're not. I run Nature's Claim anytime I can because it's just so good to get rid of something that you don't want to deal with. Otherwise, I am also on Mindbreak Trap, which that's a later edition because I think when we first talked about this, we were like 15 cards off. And this is one I jammed in after testing because there was a particular turn where I could have stopped somebody from winning if I had the Mindbreak Trap and I didn't have it. So I was like, yeah, why isn't this in the deck? And then also March of Swirling Mist, which is just premier removal on especially a turn where you're trying to win to get rid of stacks pieces or whatever. You don't necessarily have differences when it comes to that. It's more so like
I think there's very specific parallels we could make there. So you're on March of Swirling Mist in that spot. I think the parallel I'm running Calling Ritual. Sure. When it comes to Nature's Claim, you're running that. I'm running a Braid, and again, it's artifact and/or kill my Academy Rector removal.
Right.
So those decisions make perfect sense there. Mindbreak Trap, Destiny Spinner, similar kind of protection / stop somebody from winning. I'm trying to protect my win. You're trying to play that middle ground, be able to stop somebody else's storm win and/or protect your win in a combo battle, which you're more likely to be fighting if you're hardcore on the Pyrenees of the Abyss line, obviously.
Right.
Wishclaw Talisman, you're playing that, whereas I'm playing Eldritch Evolution. Again, I'm on Dockside Emil, and Academy Rector you're not, so that makes sense that you're not playing as many creature tutors. So I think a lot of our differences on our two lists are very, very similar. I'm also playing my pet card Noxious Survival, so haha, call out to you earlier. I'm playing that. And I'm playing Eternal Witness. I like both of those. I don't love Eternal Witness. That's one I'm considering cutting. But a lot of times if my... that's I think my concession to where you're playing Necromancy is I'm playing Eternal Witness to be able to get back.
I would honestly say it's more so that those two are like kind of your recursion package, and I'm running Breach. Like Breach is kind of the additional Necromancy is kind of like a 1-to-1 with either one of those. Breach covers either or. And otherwise, I think the only thing that's really super different is that I leaned a little more into some additional card advantage. I am running both Fairy Mastermind and Archivist of Ogma because they're just really good card draw. I mean, we're both on Remora and Rhystic Study, and I believe we're both on Esper Sentinel.
Absolutely.
But just having those couple extra, like any deck I put Esper Sentinel in, I put Archie in because it's just the two of them together, super good. And Fairy Mastermind has proven itself to me since like the first time I actually had a good game with it, and I just jam. If I'm in blue, I just jam it. Outside of that, the only thing we've got a little different, like I've got an Arcane Signet, which you don't. I don't know what the difference is there. It was probably just I had a slot and you didn't. And we're running a couple different lands. You're on Forbidden Orchard, which I just don't run. I hate it. I don't like it. I don't like giving away the 1/1s because people can sacrifice them. And in a world where there's Tavesh's, I don't want to give Tavesh anything more. But obviously you don't give it to him. But still, I don't like giving it to anybody. I don't want you to have blockers. I don't want you to have sack fodder. I don't want you to have anything. So I just don't. I don't play the card. And so I ended up, and then you're on Phyrexian Tower, which you want that extra sack outlet for the Rector, where I cut the Rector, so I was like, I don't need this card. So I just slotted in a couple dual lands that we didn't have in the pile, just a Breeding Pool and Roderick Grave, which aren't nothing special, but...
Yeah, and I would say I'm on the 3 differences. So I think the Arcane Signet is literally just, for me, it's 3 lands. It's for you, it's 2 lands and Arcane Signet that were different.
Yeah,
so
you're on Yavimaya. Right.
Yep. And that one is, God, I've played this deck and I've been totally stonewalled by an opposition agent. So that's also why I'm on Yavimaya. Just sometimes those fetch lands are just not wonderful if you're sitting there staring across that. So I want to still be able to advance my game plan. Also, it's decent with Forbidden Orchard. Haha, I can just tap it for green mana.
True.
Forbidden Orchard, it's got the downside of giving... I don't like giving it away because Cradles exist and everybody's playing Diabolic Intents and blah, blah, blah. But there are those instances where I can tap it and provide a blocker for my opponent who's getting attacked with a Tymna or Najila and kill a token. I mean,
Sure.
That's corner case, of course, but...
I've never even thought about it like that, so, I mean, that is a good argument.
Those little bitty niche things where it can be useful. Not always a downside that it looks like. I mean, it's... Giving away a 1/1 is pretty shitty, but it can be an okay thing at times. But just, the mana fixing is where I was at on that one.
Yeah, and I mean, we're not much different there. I'm on 29 lands, you're on 28, or 30, I'm sorry. So, like, and that is kind of where I can cut the Forbidden Orchard, because I'm usually on 29 lands and no more. And this Omnath in particular does not give a shit about landfall, unlike some of his predecessors, so you don't need 30-plus lands. Like, if he cared about that, I might actually run a few more, and then maybe I would be on that. But in this case... yeah, I don't have to, and I'm okay with that. Normally, too, a lot of my decks, I mean, notably, I'd be running stuff like City of Traders or whatever, but that just doesn't do anything in this list because of Omnath's 5 colored pits. Yeah.
Or that 2 life pip, yeah.
Yeah, like, there's just no reason to be running those kinds of lands, even though I love them. And honestly, I don't even think I'm running a single colorless land in this whole... Gemstone, if you don't get it lucky, and that's it. Most of my decks... well, aren't 5 color, so it's a little different. True. But I usually still am on like the duels, the shocks, the fetches. Even I'm not even running Ancient Tomb here, which I run Ancient Tomb in almost every list I play. So I mean, there are, and that is something as a brewer that you need to be paying attention to. I think is that you can't always jam every one of your pet cards into every deck because there are considerations to be made, and just the small amount of differences that we have here, it's not enough. It's not even a third of the deck. It's like a 1/6 or something. So like, it's not a huge difference, but it is enough of a difference that our decks would probably play differently enough most of the time to be, a different deck. It is still the same core concepts, but just making those changes can make it play to your style and the way you enjoy it. And I mean, me giving my reasoning here and you giving your reasoning here just shows that like you had this in mind and you wanted to lean towards that, and I looked at your list and said, I don't like those things, I'm going to go this way, and we both made functional lists that do the same thing at the end of the day, but they are different enough to get you there in a different way. And I think that's what's exciting about the format in general, is just being able to express your own play style through a number of different cards.
Yep, I think another inclusion for Yavimaya Cradle, I have Court of Calling and Eternal Witness with the extra green pips. It's another reason I think I chose that one. But yeah, I mean, I think that speaks to, again, what we were talking about. Brew to your style, build to your style, play to your style, tweak to your style. I mean, for me, it was more about, my light just died. For me, it was all about wanting to do a specific thing, and I'm going to jam it as hard as I can to get to that specific line. Heaven, or hell or high water, that's where I'm heading. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, in general, you're playing Breach, which is obviously one of the strongest combo pieces in the entire friggin' format. You're playing more conditional little quick draw outlets, and you're playing one of the better free counter spells that I'm not playing. So I could absolutely see where your list might be, in theory, more powerful. But again, like you said, they're going to play very similar lines. They're just going to have some nuances and some differences that could make them interesting.
To the point of this whole Brewmaster thing is that you can be a good brewer that likes jank, or you can be a good brewer that's like, I'm strictly going for the best way to do this. Now, in this case, we met in the middle, we both took on a janky project. Like, it was something that admittedly works out, but is kind of, on paper, some people might say suboptimal or whatever, right? So we both adopted that main game plan. I just went, I think, slightly more competitive / optimized, or whatever you want to call it. And that, not to say that yours isn't optimized. That's a bad way to put it. I went more. So I'm the type of player, I don't like being jammed into only one thing. And you do have a couple backup lines, but I just wanted a little bit more. And I feel to feel safe. I like that little bit of cushion that, like, if the worst possible scenario happens, like, I still have this other outlet or this other, because, you know, like, how many times have you cast a demonic consultation to get an answer, and then you're like, well, there goes one win con, shit, there goes another win con, I have no more win cons, like, fuck. So in this case, hopefully, you know, I've packed enough backup win cons that won't happen. Doesn't mean it won't, but, you know, that's the hope. And I realized after we started talking that, like, you do have more win cons in there than I gave you credit for. But a lot of your deck is pointing directly towards that one combo, whereas mine is kind of mostly pointing towards that combo, and then also has these other options just in case. And in that regard, I felt safer with it. I don't think that leads it to being more powerful. It may lead it to being more consistent, but the last time I played it, I played the Rooftop Storm, had a Serac in my hand, and forgot that he was free, and didn't cast him, and passed turn. And then everybody's like, why didn't you cast him? And I was like, oh, fuck me. So you can still make mistakes no matter how good your list may or may not be.
You just got excited to resolve a Rooftop Storm. You're like, I did it.
Yeah. Honestly, though, I don't know that I could have won at that point, because I think other people had interaction anyway, but it was still one of those things where I was like, oh, dude, I didn't even make them have it. Damn it.
Yeah, I think I saw that game. I think your opponent had a Rooftop Storm and Rhystic Study, so you would have probably fed them quite a few cards. That's
what it was.
You would have given them 3 cards to your 1 card or something. Yeah,
and I think that is what why I stopped. But yeah, whatever the case, it ended up not working out the way I wanted it to. But I have one also where I just did the whole hoarding Broodlord into the pier, and managed to do just the Thassa's. No, I think I got the Rooftop. I can't remember how I actually won it, but I've gotten a win with the deck. The rest of the time, I have done a whole lot of nothing. But you know, that is how it is. You got to get more reps in before you actually get comfortable with something and whatnot. And
Yep.
I also am, you know, admittedly not a huge fan of 5-color good stuff, and the only reason that I even ended up building this is because I liked the jank that you came up with, and I was able to build around it. So it ended up for an interesting discussion, I think.
To that argument, I would argue that your Underworld Breach, Pier of the Abyss, not Pier of the Abyss, Underworld Breach, Lion's Eye Diamond, Brain Freeze is a lot more of the conventional line. So that's another advantage that I like with mine, is a lot of people don't know what the hell's going on when I'm doing this.
Yeah.
They're not seeing the same old win cons they see all the time. So
as soon as I dropped that Rooftop Storm, people were like, what's going on? I just saw Rooftop Storm in CDH, and I'm like, yeah don't worry about it.
Don't worry about that little guy. I can tell you a spicy ass one I got the other day. I got Dockside and Emule in play, did the loop thing, created infinite treasures, cast my Sidisi from hand, sacked my Dockside, tutored up a card, blinked it with Emule, sacked itself, tutored up another card, 2 cards in 1. It was pretty sick.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
I was going to say real quick on that one, and I screwed up the line too, because if I was thinking when I was doing it, I should have, on its ETB, trigger on the stack on the second one. After I'd sacked Dockside, I think I tutored Thassa's Oracle. Second one, I tutored Demonic Consultation. I was like, aha, cool Mia. If I was thinking, I would have sacked Imperial Recruiter, blinked it with its ETB on the stack, sacked activated Emule again, blinking the Sidisi, sacked Emule to the trigger, and sacked Sidisi, so I could have tutored Protection as well, but I didn't think that far ahead. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes those things happen. I like the deck. I think it's pretty cool. We had talked about potentially, like, submitting to the database. I'm not sure if we're still going to do that, but it may be something that we do. We would just have to kind of agree on which cuts to make and which not, and maybe put the rest in sideboard and say, okay, this is a list if you like this guy's list better. So, to that point, I guess, because we're about to wrap up here, we should pose a question to the listeners here. We're going to post both of the deck lists in the chat. I will also, or I'm sorry, not the chat, in the show notes. I'm also going to post the comparison of the two lists, so you can see the actual cards that are different. I would like to know what people think about the individual lists and which one you would prefer to run. So if you guys want to comment on the video, comment on Reddit, comment on Twitter, wherever you see this, let us know which deck you think you would rather play, and we'll talk about that some more on our next episode. But we don't have any more of these lined up just yet, but we are planning on doing this. I know that between the two of us, we have hundreds of deck lists on Moxfield, and there's bound to be other ones that we share, so where we could make the same sort of comparison. So we may also, challenge ourselves to build something, in incoming sets as well. So
yeah, we might dust off some golden oldies too that you haven't seen in a minute. You never know.
Exactly. So that pretty much wraps it up for today. As we said, we have a special guest that's going to be coming on the next episode. My friend Joey. He's been on the gameplay side of the channel several times. He's one of my mods on my Discord. Cool guy. Been playing Magic with him for several years. He wanted to talk with us about Storm as a mechanic and as a viable archetype in the format, which includes lots of cool stuff. So we're planning on having him on to talk about the Storm archetype here on the next episode. And then probably after that, probably going to be running into the Lord of the Rings spoilers and maybe get back to our other list after that. But either way, thank you all for listening. Don't forget to leave your feedback anywhere that you listen and or watch this. And we'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
And I got one more little add on there. If you got any good beers to recommend, throw them in the chat too. Thanks,
Hell
everybody.
Yeah.